Welcome to the most forward-thinking, inspirational podcast in this reality. The show designed to challenge everything we've been taught. If you've ever felt there had to be more to life, more to existence, then you're listening to the right podcast. Time to open your mind and dive in. This is the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast.
And here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I actually came across a meme that says, if you can't recite the entirety of the T-Generation X entrance theme, I don't know if we can be friends. And that makes me laugh. I know that way too well. Jingle, jingle. My childhood was pretty sweet. If you really think about it, growing up in the late 90s and then the early 2000s were your party years. Well, a lot of people will say 50s and 60s were great, and honestly they were. I couldn't imagine, growing up then and just seeing all the cars and all that sort of stuff. But growing up in the 90s, we had access to that. So we had the memories. We got to see it. We watched the Wonder Years. We got the music. That was all handed to us. It would have been so cool to be alive and awake when that was coming through. But, we had that too. We had the grunge era, the Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. All these bands were phenomenal. When we're 12, 11, 13, 14, 15. And then heavier stuff as we got older. Korn, Limp Bizkit. Rock and roll really took a thing. New metal, they want to call it, whatever. But there was some good aggression in there. We got our rocks off. And you look at it now, and it's like we grew through the best era. We saw everything. We remember the crazy hair and the neon of the 80s. Sorry, of the 90s. And the crazy hair and the crimping of the 80s. We remember Gremlins and the original Toy Story and Home Alone. We remember a time when there was no internet. A time where we came home when the lights came on. And, you hear people talking about how I can't let my kids out right now. It's scary. There's people out there in white vans with no windows. I think that the times are just different. I think that the fear-mongering has really taken over. But I honestly think that the 80s were a little bit wilder. Because kids could easily go missing. and there was no major bulletin or your cell phone didn't light up when somebody went missing. It's interesting, the pros and cons, and we can go back and forth on this. And I understand too, the amount of change that takes place. And that controversy sells. This episode is going to be about Fauci and a few things I want to talk about with that, but it's also about controversy. It's about the algorithm. It's about how everything is kind of at your fingertips, kind of the same, kind of different, and how we don't spot patterns as easily as we used to. But if you really, truly do look at the patterns and you do look at what you're seeing, the demographics now, even if you want to talk about the Great Depression, for example, we're in the Great Recession, or as some refer to it, the Silent Depression. People don't realize that right now, even though it seems like we have everything because we've got our big screen TVs and our Starbucks, debt has become so much more organized. And debt slavery is everywhere. It's a fear. It's I owe this. I can't do that. I have to pay this. And so many people are in so much debt. Also, too, we have this mentality where people would rather invest in their car than their mind. People are so concerned with keeping up appearances that they'd rather have a BMW in the driveway. They'd rather spend They'd rather spend $100,000 on a BMW than $10,000 on a course that's going to make them smarter and have them earn more money. Because they take that course or whatever, they see that course, they don't believe, regardless of anything, that they've got what it takes to do that. So they won't. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust the creator. They don't trust anything. But they trust appearances because it's been beaten into our heads since we were kids. We turn the television on, there's a commercial for a BMW. BMW is status. Status means you've made it. Fake it till you make it was something that we all grew up listening to. Fake it till you make it. That was one of my dad's favorite sayings. I used to like it myself, and it got me a few places. But you understand that faking it till you make it, those who have made it can spot your fakeness. So the only people you're fooling are yourself and the low-hanging fruit. And you don't really want to do that. So you don't necessarily fake it till you make it. You demonstrate that you haven't made it, and you create a pathway to making it. You document that pathway, then you show people, hey, look, I've made it, and this is what it took to get here. That doesn't mean that everybody can succeed at everything at all times, and one blueprint is the be-all, end-all. It does mean, though, that if you have a desire to do something, you can do it. Hey, Mickey, you can do it. A nod to Rob Schneider right there. So, perception is massive. Your perception in yourself, your ability to do things for yourself. I mean, look at, again, back to the BMW. Why do we sit in a world where I'd rather have a BMW in the driveway so people think I've done something than invest a little bit in myself and have a Hyundai in the driveway? I say Hyundai, but they make a Palisade now, which is probably close to $100,000 as well. It's a good looking car, right? You know, and if you think about it too, there aren't really any crappy cars. Another thing about growing up in the 90s, we used to have beaters. You get a $500 car, you ride it until the wheels fall off, then you throw it in the trash, and you go get another $500 car. You get a bum safety, and you get out there and you get it done. Like, it was the Wild West back then. There was so much you could do, change, adapt, alter, grow. Now everything is by the book. Everything is documented. There are so many hoops you have to jump through to do anything that, for the most part, people just don't want to do it because they're bogged down with legalities or fear of legalities, or what if I do something wrong, or what if somebody arrests me? The majority of humans in the first world countries like Canada and the United States are predominantly afraid to do things because of legislation. And that's intentional as well. You've got an entire docile community who's been beaten into the ground about how masculinity is toxic and how having opinions is dangerous. I mean, 100%. It said critical thinking is not welcome during the time of COVID. They're like, it's a danger to society to be a critical thinker. In other words, do as you're told, ask no questions, and trust the science. Well, this leads perfectly into the whole purpose of this episode. Fauci just took the stand. And he played the fifth to over 100 questions, right? So as we sit here and as we talk about all of the things that we are talking about, and as we understand and comprehend all of the things that we need to comprehend, the question becomes, how is it possible to truly identify and grab a proper idea, right? And what I mean by that is, there are some of us who had gut intuitions that the vaccine wasn't wise. I understand that. So why on earth would we trust that? Why would we trust the vaccine? Why would we trust I don't even know how to put it. Here's a funny thing that's happening right now. I've noticed with technology, whenever you sort of get on a plane, a page, an idea, a topic that's really important, certain things break down. A lot of the times with clients, with really, to me, poignant and punchy topics, the internet craps out and breaks down. I'm in the process right now of trying to address something that I find to be very important with regards to the narrative of COVID. And my phone just blew up. I just got like 9 text messages in a row, and my OCD is like, "Hey, check those messages. Look at that. Do that." So as I'm talking to you, all I hear in the background is ba-bing, ba-bling, ba-bling, ba-bling. I'm like, "What's going on? Is my phone broken? What's happening right now?" But this happens almost all the time. So to me, it's like, "Hey, you're kind of on the right page here." And now I don't have an answer for COVID. I used to have an answer, be like, Fauci's a pig. He's this. He's that. The whole thing's a scam, right? And so that was my answer. And to this day, if I had to die on a hill, it would be that's, you know, the whole thing was a scam. But I don't know why it was a scam. I don't know what the purpose was. I don't know why it needed to be the way it was. I have my speculations, but my speculations are based solely on my own experiences. So for me to state I have the answers is false. All I have is an understanding of a situation based on other informations that I've procured throughout the course of my life. So I wouldn't stand here and say this is what is absolutely happening and this is the wool that we're having pulled over our eyes, because that's not true, because I don't know. So my question then becomes, look at what we've seen and what we've witnessed. We have this mass narrative where if you didn't get a shot, you lost your job. People had to inject, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what your stance is on this, just understand that people had to inject a foreign substance into their body so that they could keep their jobs. And in other cases, so that they wouldn't die. I read an article story about how this guy died because he refused the COVID vaccine, so they wouldn't do the surgery on him. But while he was still alive and declining the vaccine and thusly dying, the hospital asked the family if they could harvest his organs. So all of a sudden, he's not safe to operate on. So somebody in the hospital world, this is like real people doing a real thing. Somebody in the hospital world was like, we won't operate on you. Talk about a power trip. We won't operate on you until you inject yourself with this fucking go-go juice. But because it's unsafe, because you could kill us all. But your organs are fine to use in other people that aren't vaccinated. Like, I don't understand. And the crazy thing is, for the longest time, you know, anyone who could think freely or had the ability or a random gift of discernment was asking these questions. And when you ask the questions and you don't get the answers you want to yourself, and you start asking the questions publicly and you get ridiculed, like you look around the world and the people ridiculed you for not getting vaccinated. Look at these people now. Like, imagine ridiculing somebody for a medical procedure. You know, and then what happens is they attack. Right? So if you were afraid of the vaccine, you didn't want to get the shot, you didn't care for it, it wasn't part of your repertoire, you were bombarded by everybody everywhere. And the funny thing is, nobody really batted an eye. So what I mean by that is, like, I look around and I think to myself, all of these people had the opportunity to say something, do something, be something when it comes to the vaccine. And all of these people, the ones that did, decided to defend it and argue you and tell you that you're crazy for not doing it. And tell you that you're putting people at risk. Hell, our own prime minister in Canada at the time said, these radicals that don't want to get vaccinated are a danger to society. I can't remember his exact words, but I think he called us bigots as well. Fascists and bigots and stuff like that. And he's on record as saying, we need to be dealt with. Right? He's calling civil war. He's telling us to fight our neighbors. So those who, and here's the thing too, those who have nothing going on in their lives use this as a defense. How many times did you see cigarette smokers or people rolling around in rascals wearing face masks, yelling at you for not wearing a face mask or being whatever? Like, these people that have allowed their entire lives to go to shit because they're massively overweight, they're in a rascal, they've got diabetes, they're missing a left leg, they're smoking cigarettes, and they think that with COVID rolling around, if they put a mask on, they're immediately healthy and they've got, quote unquote, a leg to stand on to chirp you. This was rampant. The loudest people in the room were the most unhealthy that were finally saying, look, I'm doing something healthy. I'm wearing a mask. I'm like, bitch, you're doing the bare minimum, right? I think to myself, because I'm overweight myself now too, and I thought, shit, the only way that mask would have helped me is if it was permanently on my face and I couldn't stuff chili dogs down my throat. It's not going to stop anything. It's like, if masks worked, why don't we just take the little fucking masks and put them on our mufflers, right? That should fix the problem. No more CO2 emissions because we've got the masks, because the masks catch them. Oh, problem solved, right? Nobody questioned it. And now we've got Fauci sitting in the courtrooms pleading the fifth on all of this. Why does public trust disappear so quickly? For years, people were told to trust the intuitions because they were the experts. When a central figure later invokes the fifth rather than answering questions under oath, whether for legal strategy or another reason, many people naturally ask whether transparency has been replaced by self-protection. The legal right is one thing. The optics are another. This guy pleads the fifth. What am I supposed to do with that? As somebody who never wanted the vaccine in the first place, I'm vindicated. I'm like, okay, well, this is obviously they're up to something. You know, it's a peculiar thing. You got to ask yourself, what else did we accept because we were scared? Like, COVID wasn't just about a virus. It changed how quickly governments, media, corporations, social platforms could align around a single measure. Whether you agree with every policy or not, it's worth asking which emergency measures should remain temporary and which, if any, should become normalized. We sit in a position where they changed everything rapidly under the sun. In other words, this wasn't accidental. The way this changed how so many things fundamentally work, this was the buildup. This was what they were building towards. This COVID thing was a whole no more in-person business, everything sort of on your own. It's a division thing. One of the biggest pops that I have to ask myself too is who decides what misinformation is? Because something's going on with Facebook right now. And over the last several years, some ideas that were initially dismissed or labeled misinformation later received more mainstream discussion. That doesn't mean every controversial claim was true, but it raises broader questions about how uncertainty should be communicated during fast-moving events. All of the stuff, I got shadow banned, I got warnings galore in 2020 for asking questions. And here's the thing too, if you're a creator and if you're creating right now, Facebook is on a kick. Facebook was losing numbers massively because, again, I can only assume the censorship on Facebook was next level. It was top tier. And so anyone who had an opinion or who was sharing something or who wanted to create something would get blacklisted, would get shadow banned, would have their posts removed. Independent fact checker says this isn't true. So people, they lost faith in the platform because obviously the independent fact checkers were biased. And it was absurd, the shit that they were fact checking. And the funny thing is, every single thing that they quote unquote fact checked was something that people should look into. So they were highlighting, the good and the bad, the yin and the yang, the pro and the con. They were highlighting all of the important things by fact checking them. I think the Babylon Bee was the first person to push back and be like, yo, this is satire. Are we not allowed to do satire in this world? Because Babylon Bee lost its account. And then Babylon Bee was the first one to come back and firing and being like, hey, what about satire? What about comedy? Are we not allowed to do that in this day and age with regards to misinformation? Now, I say all that because if you're creating right now, Facebook is trying to get people to come back to their platform. So they're giving people a push. As opposed to just randomly putting something out there and getting no traction, 3 people are seeing it. We're finally starting to get traction. My posts are finally paying attention. This is what Facebook used to look like in 2015, 16, 17. Engagement, cross-platform conversations with strangers. It was great. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. So it's an incredible thing. But get out there and start creating right now and start pushing an idea. Be a little bit controversial. Ask a question that, the ones that really tipped off for me were the Mandela effects. Why not have a little bit of fun with the Mandela effect? Why is there so much hate in the world? But you also realize how many bots there really truly are that are running behind the scenes. These bots have like 3 followers on Facebook. They've got no profile picture or it's a cartoon or something like that. And they're chirping you and calling you a bot. Engage them. Engagement is great. So if you engage those bots, you're going to get a good return. If each post that you're putting on Facebook is earning you $15, $150 for 10 posts that go viral at the end of the month, minimally viral too. It doesn't. It's 100,000 people view your post, and if something decides to go viral, 100,000 is nothing. So you knock that out 10 times a month. There's an extra $150. A nice little bonus. And you ask yourself too, what does accountability actually look like? If major decisions affect billions and billions of people, should public expect leaders to fully explain and defend those decisions afterwards? What level of transparency is reasonable, regardless of whether any laws were broken? I believe in privacy. I believe that if you're trying to do something, I firmly believe that you shouldn't talk about anything until you've actually executed on it and done it, because people's energy can get in the way. But this isn't that. The entire world, remember this, ladies and gentlemen, the entire world, they wanted the entire world. They say there's 8 billion people on the planet. They wanted the entire world to get 2 shots minimum. And then they had 4 boosters or something like that. So 6 shots altogether. 8 times 6 is what, 42? 42 billion shots? Do you have any idea how long it would take to produce that? Since you're not reusing syringes either, where's all that syringe money coming from? Where's all that coming from? Right? These are numbers that they don't talk about. right? They want 42 billion shots into people's arms. They did everything they could. They had Robert De Niro out there ruining his career, trying to tell you to do stuff. Well, basically every celebrity now. I mean, look at Rage Against the Machine. Rage Against the Machine was poised to make a comeback and be the most prolific, powerful band ever because they're preaching against exactly what's going on right now. But they didn't. They're on record as saying, if you're not vaccinated, don't come to our shows. Well, who are we raging against then? Are we not just raging on behalf of? Right? And all Zach has to do now is come out and say, hey, look, we made some mistakes. New information's come to light. We apologize for what we said. And they'd get their fans back. But now they're an afterthought. They're dust. Nobody gives a shit about Rage Against the Machine. It's unfortunate because in 1992, they sounded like they were one of the most prolific bands going. But now they just do as they're told. And then you kind of realize that with that taking place, everybody was just kind of doing as they told. And that they were just playing a character. And that Rage Against the Machine was just a character. Just like every other band was just a character. You don't believe me? Take a look at, what is it? Laurel Canyon. Take a look at the musicians that came out of Laurel Canyon, then take a look at who all of their parents were. But don't take a look into repurposing, like Jim Morrison or what was it? Jim Morrison. There's a few of them that I can't remember his name now, but you can see the tie-ins. They repurpose the celebrities to do certain things. Rush Limbaugh. Jim Morrison became Rush Limbaugh was one of them. But their parents were all high-end CIA operatives. Janis Joplin, the Mamas and the Papas, the Byrds. All these guys were tied to covert operations. And it's public knowledge. You can take a look at all this stuff. But why would we? Because it's not what we were told. So we can only really do and see and appreciate and experience what we were told. So accountability to me is if you're going to tell people that this is going to save their lives and they end up losing a loved one because of turbo cancer, because of whatever else that we can't put our finger on. But all of a sudden, if we spot patterns and all that sort of shit, we start seeing patterns. Now, remember too, I didn't believe any of the numbers that they gave us with regards to COVID, the amount of people that were sick, I don't know if you guys remember in the height of it, there was a whole channel dedicated to tracking the COVID numbers. Like it was just this massive, beautifully orchestrated propaganda push. Now, I don't believe any of those numbers. I also don't believe in the numbers that they're saying all these people are vax injured. I don't believe in those numbers either. I believe that division is the main purpose of this, and keeping people fighting about the most stupid, monotonous shit is what the intent was, is what they're doing. So, for me, I don't believe in those numbers. I don't believe in the vaccine numbers. I don't believe in any of it. I just watch it all and I think to myself, okay, something's a little bit askew. That doesn't mean I'm over here falling for everything and not paying attention to anything. It means I'm pattern spotting and I'm coming to my own conclusions that I don't need to impress other people with, right? And none of you need to. We need to get off the bandwagon that our opinion needs to be shared. It doesn't, because the loudest people in the room are usually never right. And so I'm not here to be loud. I'm here to ask questions. If you're listening to my podcast, then you've come into my room and I'm being loud in my own room. But for the most part, when I'm standing outside in the real world, I am not loud. I am observant. So another follow-up is what happens next time. Forget COVID for a minute. If another global emergency happened tomorrow, would people trust intuitions more than they did in 2020 or less? That made the biggest long-term question the entire pandemic. What's next? What comes next? What's the thing that prevents, stops, starts, helps people? Like, what's the thing? We don't know. And that's kind of a fascinating rub. I think that whatever comes next, people are going to be like, hey, no, this looks familiar. I've seen this movie before. I ain't falling for it. So they have to come up with something spectacular. Project Bluebeam, perhaps. Maybe the alien invasion is due. Maybe we're really due for some sort of something going down and something being blown up, and we really have to have friends fighting friends. But whatever they unveil, that'll be fake too. I could go on for hours about this topic, but all I'm saying too, for the most part, is those of us who questioned the narrative got shit on. And now, are we allowed to question, or are we allowed to ask those people who shit on us what they believe? And I would say, yes, go and do it, because it'll be fascinating to see what people will do. This cognitive dissonance, this idea that they can't be wrong about anything. I'm interested to see how the world defends Fauci. I'd love to talk to somebody. I want to engage the bots to see how they defend Fauci. You know, I've engaged in a few things when it comes to the LGBTQs, and my stance on that is lesbian, bi, gay. These guys are people. They're rock stars. It's your sexual preference is not your sexual identity. Your sexual preference is not your identity to me. I'm not Adam the straight man. I'm just Adam. And what I prefer in my own time is up to me. Wherein if I made it an identity, then I would have a psychosis. My name's Adam. I'm straight. And these are the things I do behind closed doors. And I need you to know what they are, because I have a psychosis. That's a bit weird to me. So you've got the OGs, and then you've got the psychosis, people who use their sexuality as their identity. And when you utilize your sexuality as your identity, you're crossing platforms. You are not your sexuality. That's not your identity. It's just a preference. So it's funny in this, when you're watching, the OG LGBs and the alphabet mafia combat each other and talk about these points. That to me is the thing. We're looking at bot transactions for the most part online. And I've had the conversation about bots before, so people understand it. There is the ability to be a bot. And sorry about the background noise. I'm not 100% sure as to what's going on. I think the printer is kicking in. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it kick in? I've actually completely lost my train of thought. So I'm probably going to pull this out, this last little bit, because I have fucking no clue where I was going with this. So I will say this. This may seem like a jumpy ending, but I do have to run. I've gone way over on this one. We're 27 minutes in. But yeah, remember that you have the ability to discern that which you want to discern. You have the ability to attack and achieve everything that you want to attack and achieve. You are also being bombarded with division tactics from the get-go. Remember, before people even started paying attention, every single commercial on television was how useless the male husband was and how important the female was, right? The war on sexes has been going on forever. The war on genders has been going on forever. The war on identity has been going on forever, right? You think about the women. Look, all the things in music was like, get out there, it's basically saying like, leave your boyfriends at home, What's that? There's a song by Beyonce, whatever the hell it was. So it's like all of these songs, all of these things pushing people to release their morals, do drugs, be a whore, do this, do that. Like, it's all intentional. It's literally all intentional. And when you're bombarded by it so much, you realize that every single thing that we've ever been doing has been pointing us towards division. Division, division, division. It wants us to fight. Even right now, the algorithm, Facebook, the algorithm wants us to fight. Maybe I won't pull that LGB comment out because, I lost my train of thought in there, but I mean, it is a major division. When they're using subsects divided into fighting each other, in other words, the inclusivity mafia, the LGBT, the rainbow alphabet mafia, they preach 100% inclusivity, but they don't accept us. They don't accept straight people, right? So now the funny thing about that is there has to be, I have no idea what's going on with this thing. It's just making all kinds of noise. Very, very annoying. Yeah, again, totally lost my train of thought. It's bloody, and this is the thing. I was just saying that whenever I'm hitting on something punchy, something else makes all kinds of noise, and I don't understand it. I can't turn it off. I don't get it. It's driving me nuts. I'm gonna start banging on stuff. This world is doing its very best to create division. And when you don't allow it to create division, when you don't allow the dynamics to be that way, you change the system itself. The system is taught to create. See, and here's the other one too. If we go with slavery, for example, that slavery existed in the 1800s, the way it was delivered to us, creates a victim and an oppressor. So in today's day and age, there are no slaves, quote unquote, and there are no oppressors, quote unquote. But what we don't realize is that they've perfected slavery. They didn't abolish it. It's now financial slavery. And there are so many people out there that are so in debt that they can't afford food and rent. You get a choice, right? Financial slavery is dismissed. People don't believe it because it's not real slavery. It's not slavery the way it was, but it is. It's now just conglomerates against the people. So another thing too is if you say these people were slaves, that means subsequently these people are oppressors. So now I'm the bad guy because I'm white. I don't know what's going on, but people can point the finger at me and I'm just minding my own business. And that then becomes the division. I don't understand what's happening, but all of a sudden I'm a bad guy, depending on sort of where I stand and what the conversation is. Right. And so this is one of those things that regardless of anything, and if you think about this too, you want to talk about race, for example, you can think about there is Latino American, there's Asian American, there's African American, and then there's American, and just the Americans are white. So by proxy, because there's no precursor in front of my name, it's segregation. Right? There's no need to say Caucasian American, they say, because why would we? Right? So there's this implication of superiority versus inferiority. Why does this American need a label in front of their name? It almost implies they're not American. Right? African American, Asian American, what are they, not American? Are they not real Americans? So even in the verbiage, it's intentional. The verbiage is intentional because it creates, again, division. So now we've got Fauci in the box creating more division. We've got Fauci telling you to get the vaccine 5 years ago, creating division. And if you look at all of this stuff, if you look at every single pattern and every single thing that goes right down the line, division is the driving factor. Division is the purpose. The more we're divided, the less we unify. Think about this too. Even before all of this, when we were kids, the 3 most impolite topics to discuss at the dinner table: finance, religion, and politics, which are the 3 things that we should have all been discussing from the get-go so that we can understand ourselves and our surroundings even better. But we've allowed them to play us out. We've allowed them to have us not talk about the controversial things, to have us not talk about what's important and what's empowering. Division's huge, whether it's race, whether it's sex, whether it's vaccines, whether it's finance. Every single thing comes back to division. And when you stop allowing the division card to be a thing, the whole game changes. When you stop wanting to lead with hate, which is what they want everyone to do, and you're like, holy fuck, I don't want to hate you. I want to understand where you're coming from. I want to understand what it is that you're doing. Right? That's not how we do things in this day and age. We were taught to be right, to defend that you're right, and to ridicule anyone that thinks anything other than what you think, especially if it's anti-narrative. And if you got your ideas from the television, which I doubt you did because you're listening to this podcast, then you understand. Every single person under the sun is really cool. They've all got their ability to be cool. The weird ones are the bots, you know, and especially the bots that don't know they're bots. Those are the most weird and aggressive ones. Ladies and gentlemen, if any of this episode offended you, I apologize. If all of this episode offended you, I've done something right. And I don't have my button with me today, so I will say this. Disclaimer: if you're going to soundbite this podcast, you must soundbite it in its entirety for consistency and quality purposes. I wish I had my button. If I did have my button, I'd probably press the wrong one, wouldn't I, Richard? Ladies and gentlemen, in the infamous words of Red Green, if the women don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Stay connected with us directly through the mentalmasteryalliance.com. You can also join the discussion on Instagram at instagram.com/the Mental Mastery Alliance. Let the team know you're listening by using the hashtag TMMA or tagging us at the Mental Mastery Alliance. To have your voice heard on the show, leave a voicemail or send a text to 647-338-1265. Long-distance charges may apply. If you love us, leave us a review. If you hate us, you spend your time in weird ways, but also leave a review. Every review on iTunes tickles the algorithm, helping us grow. Until next time, unity over division. This concludes the most surreal portion of your day.
You got it, Pontiac.